Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast for media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and scalies. I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my co-hosts, Angron, Mathmachine, LuckyEevee, and Stryker. Today is our 18th episode, and we're discussing 1961's Gorgo, so let's get things started. Now, Gorgo is an extremely unique movie. It is one of the only, perhaps the only, kaiju movie, or giant monster movie, for those of you who, do not know the term, that takes place in Europe, specifically Great Britain. And it is a very interesting entry in the kaiju genre. Now, with kaiju, they're not as popular in some European nations as others. Kaiju, of course, is huge in Asia and the United States to a lesser extent, but in Europe, in a lot of countries, it did not take off. It was popular in Germany, it was popular in France for some time, and it was decently popular in Italy. But Britain, it was not very popular at all. So that makes this perhaps the only British giant monster movie ever made. Now, the interesting thing about this movie, too, is it was made in 1961, so the obvious comparison to Gorgo would be Godzilla. But it was not. It was inspired by the Ray Harryhausen classic, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. And the director of Gorgo previously directed The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which is a very unique connection, I feel, that they actually got the director from the movie that inspired them to make this. Now, right off the bat, this movie has really beautifully well done cinematography. Like the opening shots of the island and basically of the sea are really, it's almost something like out of Ryan's Daughter, to be honest, more than like, a kaiju movie. And the underwater photography, too, is basically something that is very intricate and very well done. Now, the other interesting thing about this movie is the first 20 minutes or so, it's more like one of the Disney live-action adventure movies like Swiss Family Robinson or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, more than the movie that it would become. But yeah, the movie definitely makes the most out of its budget because this movie had a decent-sized budget for the time, but it was nowhere near the cost of like the movies that are being made by Toho at the time. And you can definitely see that with the beginning with the boat being sunk into the sea. It really is actually, it's a miniature, but it actually looks a lot better than more miniatures done in a lot of bigger studios. And we're definitely going to see more of that later on in the movie. Now, the part on Nauru Island, which is the setting of the movie at the beginning, it's a small island off the coast of Ireland. It's very quiet and understated, which actually helps. This is one of the kaiju movies that actually has like a really, really good story. I'm not saying that, they don't have them generally, but there's some of them that know you're just there for the monster fights. Whereas this actually tries to take the time to actually give us sympathetic characters and interesting backstories. And the main character, John, who was played by William Sylvester, he would later star in 2001: A Space Odyssey as Dr. Haywood Floyd. So you can definitely tell that he is a pretty good actor. He's not as good as someone like, say, Raymond Burr in Godzilla King of the Monsters, but he does still put in a very good performance with this movie.
I'll bet.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So now the part at the beginning when they're on Nauru Island and they see the orphan boy, Sean, who lives with like the lighthouse master and that, it serves as foreshadowing, and we get to hear and see our first basically glimpse of Ogre, basically the creature, the kaiju that we're going to talk about today. She makes an appearance as a dragon carving on a Viking longboat, and the design on it looks way different than the suit we would get later. I don't know if this is because they had an old prop they were lying around that they had to use it, or if they had a different design in mind for basically the monster. But it is something unique to note. So now, there's a lot of rear projection when we're on the boats, but one thing I will say about it, it is very well done. It's a lot better compiled than a lot of other more famous movies. Like, I don't know if you've seen the comedy It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. Funny movie. But one of the funny elements in it is when they're driving the car and you can see that it's just a car in front of a screen in some shots. It's almost intentional. Lately, it's intentionally bad in some points, but this movie was really, really well done. And one thing I do have to wonder with the parts, with the boat and with the sailing and that, it also reminds me a bit of John Huston's Moby Dick. I definitely could see that with the influence and basically the way the crew of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this movie has a very unique take on a kaiju being an ancient, sea serpent beast. It's not really unique because we've seen that before. Even
Also,
with
Godzilla, to be honest, did it
exactly.
first.
The most famous one, of course, being Godzilla. But it is still there are some very unique elements about Gorgo. Now, Gorgo is our titular monster, but of course he's not the one we are going to talk about. There is a twist, which we will get to later on. The part where Gorgo first appears rising out of the water is really well done, and you can definitely tell that whoever the suit actor was, especially considering that this is a foreign production that from a country that did not do this kind of movie at all, for their first attempt at this type of film, it was really well done. And there are some obvious parts where the models that Gorgo is crushing, for example, some of the boats and the houses are
And the
pretty
Big Ben.
obviously, yeah, they bend a little. But the good part is that the scene takes place at night, so it's intentionally lit dark. So unless you're really looking for it, you won't probably notice that on first or second viewing. But yeah, Gorgo has a very interesting design for a kaiju. Its finned ears are a nice touch, as well as its red eyes in some shots, which I think it's definitely a different type of design. It's not trying to ape Godzilla or Beast in 20,000 Fathoms with them being giant dinosaurs. This feels more like a mythical, a mythical creature from Celtic mythology or such.
Or something like from Yu-Gi-Oh, but I digress.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh too.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see they probably definitely got inspiration from kaiju in general, and they might have gotten inspiration from this too, which we'll talk about in a little while. So yeah, kaiju actors went through a lot, and this pretty much goes for every single kaiju movie out there before the advent of technology where monster suits are no longer needed. These stuntmen, they had to do some crazy things. They had explosions going off around them. And in this movie, Gorgo's suit actor has to be near open flame during their first scene. And I say, kaiju actors, the suit actors, basically they went through a lot because not only were they stuntmen, they were stuntmen who had limited vision in these costumes.
I mean,
I can see that. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense because I remember hearing about the suit actor who played Godzilla actually losing weight during production in his suit.
Yeah, exactly. And again, for a production from a country that is not known for making this type of movie, they did a very good job with it. It actually has some really good monster effects, especially considering, again, this is the first and only kaiju movie I know that is filmed and made entirely in Britain or even Europe when you get down to it. So Gorgo sinking back into the deep is another good special effect. It probably was done with a platform in the water tank. I'm not sure if that's how they did it or not, but regardless, it still looks really cool. So the human drama element between the captain and the first mate, it drags a little bit, but it's not enough to sink the movie as a whole. Basically, it's stuff that you could skip over, but granted, it still is, decently well done. It's not as goofy as, say, some of the later Gamera movies or that.
Oh yeah,
I can certainly believe that.
Yeah, but now
great though.
Oh, Gamera's great. Gamera's great. We will talk about Gamera at another point in this podcast.
Yeah.
Don't you worry about that. We're going to talk about probably
yeah.
a Gamera movie at once. But yeah, the part where they capture Gorgo is a little bit silly how they use giant nets. But the part where they go down into the bathysphere it actually reminds me again of something like Journey to the Center of the Earth or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea compared to, again, other types of kaiju movies. This feels like it was taking inspiration from all sorts of things to try and make their own original story. And for the most part, I feel like they succeeded. Now, one interesting aspect of the movie, when Gorgo is in the net and he's trying to basically reach out to Sean, I believe they actually used animatronics for that. I have no idea where the animatronics went, where they are today, but I can definitely tell with like the special effect of it, and it looks really good.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's certainly impressive.
yeah. So most kaiju movies, basically, you could argue has basically an underlining theme to it. Godzilla is a metaphor for the A-bomb. Yongari is a metaphor for Japanese occupation of Korea in World War II. This movie, you realistically could make the case. This message is about the exploitation of Ireland by the British. Now, it sounds silly, I know, but if you really read into it, you definitely could make the case that this is the underlying, basically, message of the movie. Hidden message, regardless, but a message nonetheless. And I've heard it said in academic circles, and I can kind of see it, especially with how the orphan Sean, he wants to free Gorgo and warns basically the English characters what they're doing is wrong. And the musical score with the soft Celtic melodies for the most part, until of course the giant kaiju basically destruction sequence at the end, is really well done and it fits with the story. Now, Sean is interesting because there was a stereotype for a while with kaiju movies that a lot of them had like little kids in them. Look at, for example, the Gamera movies. They all had like little kids in them who knew instantly what was going on and why Gamera was there to save the day and whatnot. Now it's silly, but it's fun. But this feels again more realistic. This feels like it's a movie that, because probably they didn't base this off of Godzilla or any other Japanese kaiju movie. It gives this version a very unique vibe to it. It's like a kaiju movie that's not a kaiju movie. But yeah, they said that this movie was inspired by Beast and 20,000 Fans. But the movie, it really took a lot of inspiration from, and it's very obvious at some points, is King Kong. We're talking about because they bring back Gorgo to London to exhibit him in a circus. And there's a part with him being basically brought to London and paraded around Piccadilly Circus and that. And it's literally just the empty monster suit on the animatronic rather, put on like a flatbed truck and driven around the city of London basically. So yeah, Gorgo being sold to the circus is how you could possibly get the exploitation theme behind it, and that he's this ancient mythical being that's basically sold off to a circus and being laughed at by people who throw peanuts in that. He's basically put in a pit like King Kong. Well, not in a pit like King Kong, but he's displayed on stage, much like how Kong was in the theater. But yet this version, compared to King Kong, I think you feel more, not regret for Gorgo, but you feel more sympathetic towards Gorgo because you actually see how the people are reacting to him compared to the original Kong, where he was depicted more as a curiosity and anything. You still felt sympathy for him, but not as much as this. And it's especially shown when Gorgo tries to escape, and they basically draw him back with flames. They have the guys in the suits, protective fire-resistant suits with the flamethrowers, to basically stop Gorgo from leaving his pen. So now, since Gorgo actually was a smaller monster suit compared to a lot of others, it probably was maybe around the size of Minya from some of the later Godzilla movies, so I can't confirm this. It's kind of hard to find out really a lot of behind-the-scene info about the movie, sadly. Yeah, what they did use, they used forced perspective and a very small sets to make him look larger than he was. And it works, because until I actually read that it was a smaller suit, I would have had no clue that it wasn't like the same suit they used for Ogre, sorry.
Ogre from the Yeah, from the Dark Crystal. Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, like I said.
yeah.
Sorry,
They
go ahead.
also used electric. They also used electric fences for Gorgo to like keep him in there.
Yep. Which again, you could say is inspired a little bit by Jurassic Park, and
A little
later
bit.
on when
Wait,
when
Jurassic
Ogra
Park came out. When did it come out?
93 years after this.
93.
So
Years
I
after
don't
this.
think it was inspired by Jurassic Park.
No, I meant Jurassic Park was inspired by this. I'm sorry.
There
I
we
always say
go.
it the other way around, doy.
Misspoke. You're
I
fine.
know, definitely tongue twisted. But anyway, yeah. The double-decker buses with like the Gorgo logo on it apparently existed in real life when the movie was being made, and it basically was a free marketing campaign.
Yeah.
So that worked.
Every time I hear double decker, I immediately think it's followed up by double decker double decker couches from the Lego movie.
Yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, the part where Sean sneaks into the circus and basically, has a moment where he stares at Gorgo sadly. It is legit, like, heart-wrenchingly sad how they do this. It is something that really, really surprised me how they got away with this kind of, not got away with, but it's really surprising how much emotion they put into this movie. Now, it's not like I'm maybe overselling it a little. It's not the best kaiju movie, but
Yeah.
it is probably one of the more interesting ones in terms of the genre. So now we get to a big twist in the story. Gorgo is an infant, and Ogra is Gorgo's mother. And of
And
course, she is very, very upset that her child has been stolen from her, which, again, probably inspired, not was inspired, it may have inspired the Lost World Jurassic Park, especially with the part with the T-Rex rampaging through San Diego for its child. I would be very surprised if Spielberg did not take a little bit of that from Gorgo.
yeah.
But
I
yeah,
can definitely imagine that.
yeah, Agra basically
Yeah.
destroys the buildings on Nehru Island for losing her child, and it's done again pretty decently. A lot of good modeling work. Now, Agra is interesting because she is one of the extremely small examples of 100% legit female kaiju's. There's not a lot when you really get down to it. There's
Yeah,
of
you
course
got Moth.
Mothra.
You
There's
got
Hedorah.
Mothra.
There's
Yeah. Wait. I'm sorry. Back that up. Mothra, and then what?
Hedorah, right?
I have never heard of that.
Huh. I thought, Hedorah, the smog monster, basically. I thought that was supposed to be female.
Oh, weird.
But anyway, there's a Gaios from Gamera, which a lot of people don't know actually, I believe, is female. But aside from that, there's really not a lot, which is very interesting. Most kaiju are either, male, or they don't say what the gender is outright. But Gorgo, but Ogra is one of the very few kaiju that is, 100% basically female, which is very interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like, there honestly should be some more like female kaiju out in the world. I mean, we do also have Kong's mom, but
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah,
Yeah. Also, what's very what's
Sorry,
very
go ahead.
interesting about Olga is other than that is the fact that like I think compared to her son, I think she has the darker red eyes. I could be wrong, but like they're very, very much more prevalent on her because I mean just like the few bits that I've seen of her on the movie, it is very surprising that it's honestly quite fitting that she like trashes around London looking for her kid like in the way that she does. Like she takes down freaking London Bridge. She takes down the Big Ben.
Exactly.
Those were
Actually,
the
the
only two that I
kaiju
just saw.
destruction is really, really well done. Now, before we get to that part, the problem with this movie, probably the biggest problem, is the amount of military stock footage when basically, Agra is lumbering towards London from, Nehru Island. It is almost comical the amount of footage that they use at one point, and at one point, I believe they used the same footage, so they just flip it in horizontally reversed it to have like a plane take off, then another plane take off. And Apparently, all of this military stock footage was added without the consent of the director, and he was so upset at that he made a director's cut, which apparently removed all of the military footage. Granted, that probably makes the movie a little bit shorter, but it would be a big improvement because I feel like for the most part, a lot of the stock footage was unneeded. A couple of shots, yeah, but I feel like for the most part, it was padding, and it really is tedious padding at that, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. It mainly is padding.
Yeah, and unfortunately, yeah. So yeah, like Angron said, Agra makes her way to London, and it is kind of eerie when you realize that, London had the Blitz less than 15 years before this, and they were doing a whole thing with, London being destroyed yet again. It's a little bit eerie, but the model effects are very well done. The parts where she destroys London Bridge and when she destroys Big Ben and that are really, really well done. It is. I would actually compare it to Godzilla in some shots and how the part where Agra basically swats a building down with her hand. It is something that I am really impressed with that they actually managed to get away.
Right.
Yeah.
And as far as the Blitz is concerned, Godzilla tackled nuclear disasters just 10 years after that. So
definitely, it's not foreign to the idea of kaiju, basically.
Yeah, and it honestly wouldn't be too out of left field to assume that Gorgo in particular was like a rendition of the bombings from World War II.
Exactly. That could be another metaphor. But yeah, the only thing that does kind of affect this sequence is there are some pretty poor compositing shots when for example, a building collapses and the debris rain down on people. You can very easily tell that the footage of the debris has been placed over the people because it's almost transparent in some shots. And it's kind of a shame because that it looks kind of silly when compared to parts of the rest of the movie, especially with this fantastic modeling work, which is, again, really, really the highlight of the movie, and is probably why I would actually recommend this movie for most viewers and most kaiju fans, just to see. Part of it is the novelty, again, of a kaiju movie placed in an area where a lot of kaiju movies do not happen. But another part is that it is legit well done. I mean, some of these shots are very, very professional, and I am really surprised they did not do any more of this because it is very, very good.
There is also that overlay thing with some fire shots as well.
Yeah, exactly. When Agra is set on fire as well. And
again, those are few and far between, and otherwise, this is really well done.
Yeah, and there's also one part that is a little bit not so much goofy, but a little bit off-putting. There's a reporter character reporting on the damage that Agra is causing to London. You can tell this was a last-second addition because this character is placed on top of the footage in a blue screen or and they didn't even really composite him out of it very well because you can see a little bit of the outline on his hat and coat. And you could tell this was something done probably by the producers in the last second, basically to try and pad the movie out a little more. And it's a shame because that honestly is the worst effect of the movie, is this reporter character, because it looks like they filmed this person in a completely different studio at a completely different time and just slapped him on top of the pre-existing footage. But aside from that,
like a sticker, just lick the back.
Exactly. It's exactly like that.
Yeah, like a stamp.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. But yeah, the part with the Agra basically being caught up in the roller coaster is 100% taken from a Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, because they captured the Beast in a roller coaster in that movie. But here, of course, Agra just smashes her way through. And the part where she reunites with Gorgo is surprisingly heartwarming despite everything. Now, there is an interesting thing about this. They have, of course, Gorgo basically looking up to his mother, which is anticipated as a giant, basically foot, basically her foot and her ankle. Now, I really wonder how they did that shot because I don't think, maybe it was through angling, it was through like forced perspective, but it's a shot that you don't really see a lot of in kaiju movies because, again, with like Godzilla and Minya, for example, they were done with like a smaller suit and, of course, Godzilla size. There were actually two physical suits in the same scene together, whereas this appears to be two suits composited in the same shot, but yet it's seamless. So,
Yeah.
despite all of like the destruction and all of the basically, devastation caused by London and all the death, because this has a pretty big death toll, even for kaiju. This is a pretty big death toll. I mean, that entire like tube station of people completely destroyed. So, yeah. Despite that, it has a very wholesome ending, and it has a very, I don't know what to call it, but it has a very almost heartwarming ending with with man learning his lesson about tampering with nature. Again, sort of like King Kong, but done in maybe a more not sympathetic, but maybe not even realistic, but basically a more heartwarming way. Let's put it that way. We didn't get to see any of them die, and that's another thing unusual for a kaiju movie. The kaiju actually live, which is unusual for its first movie, because usually they're killed off like Godzilla or sent away like Gamera. But in this, Agra and Gorgo basically get to go back home to their island, to their home in the sea, to live basically peacefully away from the ravages of man.
Yeah, because to be fair, they did kidnap the kid, so
that's what I was going to say. That's what I was saying. It is, again, like King Kong, with man tampering against forces he does not know with nature. And again, we'll talk about that when we talk about King Kong in this podcast, which definitely will happen sometime in the future, so look out for that. But yeah, Gorgo was a surprising hit. It actually made 3 times its budget back, which, very surprising, especially from a movie that, from a country that did not seem to be really into these type of movies. And this movie was actually remade in Japan as Gappa. And they are, basically what they are, they're more like a giant pterodactyls than, the actual monsters of Gorgo. Aside from that, and the addition of, a father to, Gappa, it is the exact same movie. Literally, beat for beat, it is literally the exact same movie as Gorgo. So I have to wonder how much business it actually did in Japan to where it actually warranted a Japanese remake. But yeah, there are, of course, kaiju is associated with Japan, but there are a lot of non-Japanese kaiju that are very interesting. For example, there's a Yongari, basically that is from South Korea, and it's interesting that, like I said earlier, Godzilla is a metaphor for the A-bomb. Yongari is a metaphor for Japan over basically Korea during World War II. And what's interesting that all the buildings that Yongari destroys in their rampage of, Seoul, they all were specifically done up to be the buildings that the Japanese built during World War II, which is very fascinating and is a very interesting take on things. And Yongari is another movie that it's really good, and again, very good modeling work, and they surprisingly never made any sequels to it. There's also Pulgasari from North Korea, which very interesting backstory behind that, which involves a director being kidnapped and a lot of other things. There's Anpaman from Thailand, which is interesting. A bunch from China. Really, it's just interesting in that how kaiju seems to be a concept that's almost universal, and yet for some parts of the world, it just never took off. Again, like Britain. Even though this was a monster hit, and unlike, Yongari, where Yongari basically is killed by missiles and bleeds out, this did not open itself up this actually opened itself up for a sequel, and it never got one. At least not a theatrical sequel. It did get a comic book series drawn by none other than Steve Ditko, aka the creator of Spider-Man. So that's interesting. Yeah, it lasted for 23 issues, and apparently it was kind of like the Godzilla sequels or the Gamera sequels, in that it basically was Gorgo is kidnapped by another monster, and Angron basically has to go and save him from these monsters. I looked up some copies online because apparently you can find some drawings of it. It's pretty interesting, and I'm really surprised they never decided to make any theatrical sequels. I mean, this did well at the box office. It actually got pretty decent, critically acclaimed, which, again, very surprising. And they had pretty much the suits and everything ready, but they just never followed up on it, which is a shame.
That is a shame.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a shame.
Again, yeah. And originally, one thing that's interesting that they probably could have done for the sequel, they were originally going to make this movie in France, but apparently filming it in France would have been very expensive. Another suggestion was going to be filming this in Australia, but they decided against that because they felt Australia didn't have any recognizable landmarks for, basically Angron to destroy. Keep in mind, the Sydney Opera House wasn't even under construction when this was made, so they kind of probably had a point there.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. I mean, I also read that the director of this movie was French.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Eugene,
he also directed Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Yeah, Eugene Laura, yeah.
Yep.
So now it is time for the question of the week, which is, what is your favorite non-Godzilla kaiju? And mine is a tie between Mothra and Rodan. Mothra because, let's be honest, she is iconic for a reason. She is one of probably the most famous female kaiju, but not only with that, it's also that her design is really just so well done. She looks incredible. I mean, you could definitely tell they gave her so much personality, and basically all of her movements, and she really feels alive. And her being more of a sympathetic kaiju compared to a lot of the others, she basically is the good kaiju. Not that the others aren't good, the ones from the Toho franchise, but they definitely are a little bit more rowdier than Mothra, shall we say. Now, my second choice is Rodan because I just think Rodan looks cool. I'm sorry. His design he looks awesome. And that is part of the reason why I'm looking forward to talking about Gamera versus Gaios in the future, because Gaios has a really awesome design as well. Angron, what would you have to say?
Oh man, that is gonna be a little bit of a tough one. So can we also count stuff that's like within universes like Pokemon or
go ahead, any kaiju.
Okay, so if not kaiju, and if not Godzilla, sorry, and if not Mecha Godzilla, which I kind of want to count.
Mm-hmm.
Would that still count as Godzilla?
Yeah, that counts. That counts.
Because it has Godzilla in the name.
Yeah, it counts.
Okay. Then in that case, I am going to have to say Slifer the Sky Dragon from Yu-Gi-Oh!
Okay.
I mean, have you seen the size of that thing? I mean, there's a damn good reason why it's called why it's called the Sky Dragon. Like, this thing is huge. Blocks out the frickin' sun. It has 2 frickin' mouths. Like, seriously. You are talking about a frickin' Egyptian god, quote unquote, that pretty much is the most powerful card, even amongst cards like even Obelisk the Tormentor and the Winged Dragon of Ra. You cannot get any more crazy than that. Or for the most part.
I will say one fun fact that I found out about for Slifer, by the way.
Oh, yes?
Go ahead.
He's actually named after one of the executive producers in the English dub.
We'll be in and out, okay?
That makes sense.
Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah,
I mean, the anime did come first, so that.
I definitely could see why.
Actually, in Japan, Slifer is actually the Sky Dragon of Osiris.
That's a really cool name.
Yeah.
That checks out.
Yeah, the names are way different in Japan, even for
I
the
don't doubt it.
Yeah.
Sounds
In fact,
more
I'm
and
gonna
more
look it up
literal,
right now.
basically.
Yep. Sorry if I stepped on any toes.
Nah, you stepped on no toes, my guy.
Oh,
Let's
thank you.
see.
I
Not
just
at all.
I
Not at all. It's okay.
thought I'd tell
Giant
a fun
Divine
fact.
Soldier of Obelisk. That's Obelisk, which is not as good. Winged Dragon of Ra. Let's see here. And the Winged Dragon of Ra is the Winged Divine Dragon of Ra. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, really.
Like,
But yeah.
honestly, that is kind of a downgrade compared to Slifer the Sky Dragon. Another reason
Obelisk.
why Slifer's better.
Obelisk and his mad drip.
Yeah, yeah. Slifer the Sky Dragon is the Chad among versions.
Yeah. Slifer, the executive producer.
Oh, that's
Oh,
good.
yeah.
That's good.
Oh yeah, that frickin' works.
Hell yeah.
So,
Oh, that's awesome.
so, Math, what would you have to say is your favorite non-Godzilla kaiju? Now, it could be a kaiju from the Godzilla universe, just not Godzilla himself.
Hands down, Mothra.
Yeah.
Basically every reason that you said, Ludmillanon. Just a really great, unique design, really great personality, so much character from her, and just this regality that you don't get from any other kaiju.
Yeah, more. I mean, other than
Yeah,
Godzilla, but yeah, I agree. Also,
Definitely.
also, in a Super Nintendo or Super Famicom, if you want to get technical, fighting game starring the Godzilla characters, Mothra is easily one of the most one of the most busted characters. Like for a fact that she uses a dust attack that can deflect ranged attacks, and like her own beam attack can be used to like bounce around the scales and like dealing massive damage. It is crazy.
I can imagine
Wow.
it is.
Yeah, if not Fight for the Sky Dragon, I would have easily picked freaking Mothra. Mothra definitely has a lot of good character, but come on, it's the freaking director of the Yu-Gi-Oh! English dub. How can you compete with that, to be honest?
Honestly, there's no competition.
Definitely not.
Slifer,
Not
the
from that.
executive
Not from
producer.
that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Uh,
All right, what about you, Stryker?
Oh, absolutely Mothra. Hands down.
Same.
Her design is beautiful. It feels there's just something deep within with her for me that I just can't help but love and adore.
I mean, she is fluffy, so that helps.
Well,
That
yes,
definitely
she looks
does
very soft. But another thing is that I actually did base a character design on Mothra as well.
Nice.
oh, nice.
Oh yeah. I couldn't help it. I had to, you know.
I don't blame you.
I don't
Yeah.
either.
And what about you, Evie?
I think mine's gonna be the tallest one here.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh.
Eternatus.
Fuck yeah. I was actually going to say Eternatus, but yeah,
Nice,
Slifer
nice choice.
did more for me. But yeah, I 100% agree. Eternatus, holy hell, it is quite an enigma, to say the least, and it really made Sword and Shield pretty damn impressive, all things considered. Well worth the
Definitely,
reveal.
definitely.
Plus, anything that takes the title biggest from Whaler is already pretty impressive.
I know, right?
But this thing dwarfs Whaler.
Yeah.
Look, that thing is badass.
Yeah. The
Definitely.
only downside I can think of with Eternatus is the fact that you can't really get its Eternamax form, but I mean, it's already impressive on its own. It's got a move that can topple, technically topple freaking Gigantamax Pokemon. It already looks amazing. Like, it's a dragon eaten alive by raw toxic energy. I mean, shit, it might as well be holy fuck, it actually is a Draco Lich. Let's not beat around the bush. It is 100% a Draco Lich. How crazy is that?
That is awesome.
Man.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else from you, Evie?
Nah.
All right.
Okay, so now it is time for the patent pending Dragoness Scale, and today we are going to review, of course, Agra. I'll go first. Now, I have to take in mind that she is a kaiju, so there's not really much with the character development or, dialogue, because again, she is a kaiju, so she technically does not really speak. With that being said, I am going to give her a 7 out of 10 because not just with the novelty of her being one of the few female kaijus, one of the kaijus basically from a European nation, it's also that I really feel that despite her limited screen time, she only appears in like the last 20, 30 minutes of this movie. And with all the military stock footage cut out, it's probably not even that much. But granted, you really get a feel for her rage of her wanting her child back. And of course, Gorgo has a great design, and Agra is basically just a larger version, a scaled up version of Gorgo. So that definitely puts it into consideration. The modeling work of her destruction of London, again, really, really well done. That's another point in her favor. And overall, I think that she is a very, very unique type of kaiju that we surprisingly do not have a lot of.
That is true. I am going to give her a little less than that, 6 out of 10.
Okay.
Well, so let's see here. She comes at like the last 20 minutes of the movie, so that kind of detracts a little thing. Again, she's
It
one of
does hurt a bit.
Yeah, I will also say this, like, she's definitely devoted. She really knows what she wants, and she absolutely gets it, and she 100% gets a happy ending for it. But yeah, again, a little bit of characterization could have helped her just a little bit. Not saying give her a full-on speaking voice, because that would be a little odd to say the least.
Exactly,
But
yeah.
I will admit that, like, I will say that I haven't seen a whole lot of her due to not at the time being able to see at the time wasn't unable to see all of Gorgo because life can suck sometimes. But I will say this: from what I saw of Olga, she certainly looks devoted. Her design's impressive, and okay, you know what? I think I'm probably gonna have to bump mine up to like a 7 out of 10 personally.
Okay,
Like, she
no
got a
problem with
happy
that.
ending. She's one of the few female kaiju that isn't like Mothra, and honestly, I'm happy for that. Angela better though.
That's good. Okay, Stryker.
I'm gonna have to go with a 6 out of 10 for right now because I have yet to view the movie.
All right, no problem with
But
that.
I do think that her design is pretty well done.
Okay, Mathmachine.
I'm going to be going with a 6 as well. For as much as I did like the movie and thought the production was really high quality for the era that it's from, the only thing I could think from when the monsters came on was, Oi, Gov, can we have Godzilla? We got Godzilla at home. Godzilla at home.
Oh,
For as
God.
much as I can absolutely see the difference between this and Godzilla, because I actually think this is closer to King Kong, like you've been
Yeah.
saying.
Oh no!
I can't see this monster without seeing this is just a lesser Godzilla.
Yeah,
You mean
yeah.
like
I mean,
For the most
King Kong
part.
versus Godzilla? You mean
yeah,
like King Kong versus
I mean,
basically.
props to the single working at home mom, but like,
Yeah, yeah. I did
yeah,
see
I
that.
mean,
the original
I'm-
King Kong versus Godzilla, might I add?
Yeah.
And I will give absolute credit. Like, this is an amazing model and suit that they made, especially for the era. Like, this is like 70s or 80s quality suit. It's just, you don't really get anything from it. It's a nice design. It's not quite Godzilla level iconic design, but it's a nice design. Uh, there's just no real personality that comes through in this, other than the whole angry mother wanting her child back. That's what makes Godzilla work, is that you got so much personality and charisma, even from the very early movies. And this, all I got was, if I may steal a line from Hulk, giant monster!
Exactly.
Yeah, I get
Exactly.
it. Definitely,
That's
definitely. I could
Definitely
definitely.
true. Like a giant more like a giant animal, since like she did have her child kidnapped. So there's a little
Right.
leeway there, but yeah, I will definitely admit that a little more diversity would have definitely helped.
So
Oh,
yeah,
100%. 100%.
it's a 6 for basically quality alone rather than character.
Okay. And LuckyEevee, what would you have to say?
I'd say 5. I'm not too big at the design. I'm not too big on the design.
Okay. That's no
Sorry,
problem at all.
what? 2 out of 10 you said?
He said 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Okay.
wait anything that long unless I actually felt on this.
Okay.
You're fine.
So, if you have any questions or if you want to get a job at Dorkins Circus, you can email us at fierydiscourse@outlook.com or email us at visit us on Twitter at twitter.com/fierydiscourse. Next time, we'll be talking about the 2019 OKKO episode, Deep Space Vacation. So with Cosmo, that's going to be a lot of fun. Yep, she's one of the great, more recent Dragonesses, and we're definitely going to have a lot to say about her. So, thank you guys so much for listening, and until then, take care.
Peace.
So
Adios.